Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here with the 31st episode of Cultist Simulator, the Dancer DLC, playing as Margaret Zell. And for those of you who are watching this in one big playthrough or playlist on YouTube, may be a little surprised to see the changed state of the board. So I don't want to spend too much time. I also, if I take some time to work out board layouts in between recording videos, it makes me wonder why am I not just recording videos. But in this case, I sort of felt it was time to try and bring a little bit of order in. Now, I'll actually confess, I've done a bunch of different board layouts. This isn't necessarily my favorite, but it's given me there's enough for me to sort of work with. And one thing I find kind of interesting is that I had what was kind of my standard board layout for a long time, but sometimes you just want to change it up, right? Like there's ways that I want to try and keep things interesting for myself. And so I sometimes wind up doing sort of weird and wonderful new ways of playing around with the game. But one thing I've always found is that the items are always the greatest difficulty for me. So you can rank things in terms of lore, and you can associate them with followers. You can also associate them with items, but there's just simply not enough room on the table to be able to put them all in, columns. You might be able to work them out as rows, but then in that case, even in this case, I've not really made it all that efficient in terms of moving to the different verbs and such. But in this case here, this has given me a little bit more breathing room as far as the lore is concerned, because that's going to be one of the things that's growing a bit more quickly. And there's little imperfections. So for instance, I'd prefer it if the cards weren't overlapping the numbers. Sorry for those of you who didn't notice and are now annoyed by that, but I figured this is enough for me to work by. But if it looks different, that's why. It's a little crowded over to the left here, and it's maybe not so clear. It's like, you know what, I was going to talk about, I'll maybe on the last episode kind of talk about why I laid it out this way, but it's the crowding on the left here kind of defeats what I think some of my plans were, but that's life. So we're slowly making progress in Lockwood Fen. I did say that I wanted to try and make more progress and that I wasn't going to talk as much about lore, but as it happens, there were a couple of particularly useful texts that came up for me to discuss that stuff, so maybe I should be a little more hesitant to say whether or not I'm going to move on that. And again, I'm just kind of recognizing that it is something that people still find interesting. It's more about finding the balance rather than abandoning one or the other. But we are going to continue on with our expeditions. I'll keep reading the works that I've got. This should be enough to keep us working as we go through the expeditions. And then probably, I know we'll have a little bit of translation work ahead of us, but I suspect we'll probably have some new works to go with. So I suspect we're probably going to keep using the study verb for our we're going to keep using the study verb for the books that we find pretty much until Karashim. So with that in mind, let's read the Incandescent Tantra. Michael Blockley, Michael Blockley, the eccentric iron magnate, was fond of quoting from this tantra. Blockley died in a factory fire. One reference I would maybe take here, this is a very weak one, but Cater and Hero, I would maybe want to go back and see if there's references to Forge in terms of it. Because, there's the idea of manufacturing, building, maybe not so much. I wouldn't necessarily associate Forge directly with wealth generation, but to a certain extent, right, manufacturing is something that we associate very much with wealth generation. And so it'd be interesting if you happen to see a lot of very financially successful individuals who line themselves up with the aspect of Forge. And it is worth noting that, the power ascension, the power ambition rather, is very much associated with Forge. Now, of course, it is possible to have money and not have power, but it sure helps. So, in any case, dialogues with an entity called the Crucible Prince. The prince warns about the appetites of his mistress, the Burning Queen, and the peril of the naked desire she shares with the sun, but professes his loyalty nevertheless. The Watcher's confusion. Their bewilderment is our opportunity. We'll pass in silent secrecy. Mirrors are calm, the sun is steady, the glory recedes. I'm sane, if that means anything. And Dr. Redeem would like another commission on the histories, so good for us. We'll do that after our shift at the Gaiety. And of course, as always, we're going to send out... We'll get Dorothy to do some charm work. Not that we're unhappy with Clovette's performance, but we need to keep the whole club in. You know, we need to keep the whole club active. Now, actually, I should maybe try the Winged Doll and one of... If I can get a Moth influence, maybe... Or no, actually, I would have to use the doll or the Moth influence. But I should maybe see if I can level up one of my Moth followers. I think I'm still short on the lore, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Alright, that's inconvenient. Light leaks through the cracks. My mind is brighter than it ever was. The higher I rise, the more I see. Last night, in the billowing blue of the Lodge of the Sage Knight, I sat on velvet cushions and watched two dead contend with shining swords. They came with the place, said the woman who rules her now. Here now, the one who once called herself Gallagher. I was not the Sage Knight, if that's what you're wondering. He went higher in the Mansis long before I came here. My attention has drifted. The swords sparkle like falling water. The dead move like dancers. So we may have to work with this later. Actually, let's just see. So we don't have a Season of Visions coming up, so there is a question as to whether or not I would want to get rid of that right away. You know, probably just as well, because the Fleeting Reminiscence is going away in 39 seconds anyway, so we don't lose too much by... Oh. Tonight, since an opportunity tonight, I could attract attention if I cease to hold back, if I commit myself more fully. So this may stop me from doing the commission for the simple reason that I'm going to need to use the restlessness. But for now, let's throw some passion in. Tonight, they'll notice that. Actually, we might be able to get by. Yeah, okay. I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards, I received a gift from an admirer. A little too personal for me to feel comfortable, but I can sell it in the second-hand market. Okay, so we've got 29 seconds before the Season of Ambition, so I think we can actually afford to do the Secret Histories work here. So we'll grab our reason. This may be useful for commission. And the expedition continues, which in this case no more obstacles, so we just need to wait for the remaining text. Crocus Hill will follow immediately, but we'll wait. I've still got probably 2 minutes before that becomes available. A right which changes is necessarily a right which destroys, but a great change requires a destruction of savage extent. And we now have the Candidate Invocation. This may mean that we can finally bring in the... Oh no, it says right here. The names of the Forge have all spoken these words. Use this in a rite with a knock influence and a bone flute or other resources of equal power to summon a Callagine. So this is a particularly helpful one for us, simply because we've been looking for ways to destroy evidence, and we now have what we need for getting the excuse me, getting the summons that we've been looking for. Okay, back to the study. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of obliviates. It is not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 38. That they did claim inheritance of the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and its most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. Here on a flat rock, inches above the marsh water, is a throne carved of yew wood, ripe with fungus, ornamented with tarnished copper. This is the shrine we seek. So from this on its own, I would have said... So I think I'd referred earlier to copper potentially being associated with Forge. If we wind up seeing some Forge references here, then we feel a little more confident. And if this winds up being all Moth that we find, then I might want to reconsider that and say that maybe copper is actually better associated with, with Moth, with the wood, with all those concepts. Now I can approach the white... Now I can approach the white door through the bounds. Now I can press my fingers to it, feel its chill, watch it swing open. As it opens, my mouth closes, tightens, heals over like a lost deformity. Around and about me is the cobalt light of the mantis. Apple green paint marks ritual circles on the rock. The remains of sacrifices past squelch beneath our feet as we search the shrine. In a little hollow in the throne rests an oiled bundle of treasures. So we've got an icon of St. Agnes. It's pretty helpful. The flayed tantra. Now that I believe is still, that is still heart. Okay, another vital pigment. Another winged doll. Okay. So again, the copper connection was a fairly weak one, but there isn't quite the same evidence that we had before. Now we did also run into a few other items, so we did see the vital pigment, which would be associated with Grail, and we do have the flayed tantra. But at least here, I wouldn't have sort of a direct case to make between connecting forge and copper like I did before. Of course, then what I would maybe want to do is go back to that location and say it's like, okay, well, do we have further evidence that there might be a reference to Moth that we had missed before? And again, that's maybe an example in terms of where there's a bit of feedback both ways. In terms of these kinds of investigations. And again, this is all assuming, this is assuming a certain level of interest in the lore of the game, in doing these kinds of investigations. It definitely does feel a little bit like you're sort of throwing everything against the wall, but it's one way I sort of like working, which is to, you can generate a few hypotheses and then you just, you start eliminating them, right? It's almost kind of the Sherlock Holmes approach, is just start eliminating the impossible. And generally you'll find more impossibilities emerge once you start comparing what you have in your head against what you see inside the game, inside the world of the game. The stage awaits hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. Okay, so we're gonna wait a little while on the translations. I'll still work through what I've already got. We are gonna move directly to Crocus Hill. The ancient tribes reserved this resting place for one who, by the end, in the service of, to a certain merciless hour, was more scar than man. They sealed the entrance with binding songs and mortared blood. I actually think that there was, and actually it's still possible that this is true, but what's interesting here is that we definitely, we've got what should be a reasonably clear reference to Edge. If it's not clear, that's fine, but maybe what I'll just say, and we'll make this a little bit more interactive, if it's not clear why this is an Edge reference, perhaps what you can do is in future videos, you can notice whether or not we start seeing some more references to scars, and particularly a scarred person, because of course we have a moth scar here. So if you think about the reference that I was doing before, it's like, oh, okay, more scar than man. Well, that's clearly a moth aspect, right? Because, we've got a level 4 scar. But in this case, it's actually specifically because it's a flexible aspect as opposed to some of the others. There are definitely other scars. So this would be an example where the incorrect inference is being made, but we'll have a mechanism to sort of identify, okay, no, I was reaching too far when it came there. So if you're not clear who this is referring to, we will run into some references, actually it might even be in some of the books that come from this one. But what is interesting here is the idea of the merciless hour, because of course we can refer to the unmerciful mantra. Mercy, saith the watchman, is found only in shadow. And this is, I always kind of like associating Lantern with reason and knowledge. Lantern is the principle of the secret place, sometimes called the house of the sun, and the light above it. But it's not necessarily just, it's not a particularly nice hour. Like this, I think there's still something interesting going on with Lantern. I don't necessarily think it's one of the fuzzier hours. And it's maybe one of the lesser appreciated aspects of it. The one who came here before us had marked the door in the hillside, and here it may yet be, but it is sealed besides with stone and binding spell. So of course here we would associate this with knock and forge in terms of opening, but I'm still going to bring my usual summons, and then we can add more people as time goes by. Our fears were realized, the mystique was taken up. Optimism is the spice which saves. So Dorothy, once more please. And of course if we're lucky, it's this notoriety that gets picked up instead of this one. And I'm no further along the path, my path of change. In the movements of the secret forms, I must find my lesson. So we'll deal with this restlessness when we can. Now I share the right that the Order used to summon Caligine's spirit. In clear defiance of the Lethan tradition, they did not offer knock lore with a winter initiate, but a Malleus imperative, but rather winter lore with a knock initiate in the Malleus. It is not to be borne. So, Operation of the Declining Sun, and of course we've already got the Rite of Watchman's Sorrow. The Concursum Diaries. Oh, we've not read this yet. So actually, we're translating a little bit sooner than I thought we would. Now, we don't have Frisian, so that's not too helpful for us. And we also don't have Aramaic, although that is one that we could get sooner. So let's read what we've got. So we'll start with the Shaven Loktadra, also known as the one who has shaven his hair. This, the story goes, is the lore that even the shape-changing Vanaras rejected. So we'll take our Sanskrit, we will take the work, lock the study door, the work begins. Also, I should have talked with Dr. Adim about his commission. Oh well. Okay, our expedition plans for the next challenge. It'll consume funds. I could add funds now, or I could send another follower. So forge or knock, as we expected, so let's add Enid for a starter. My own heart pumps more strongly today. Alright, tonight I sense an opportunity. Tonight I could attract attention if I cease to hold back, if I commit myself more fully. Tonight, they'll notice that. I felt all their eyes upon me. Afterwards I received a gift from an admirer, too gaudy for my tastes, but I can sell it in the second-hand market. Alright, so I don't really have anything commission-wise to work on. In this case, we'll just go straight back to the Gaiety. Certainly the money's not going to hurt, given that we are using quite a bit of it for the expeditions. The stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, then they'll pay me. And let's back to the Lodge of the Sage Knight. I've learned something that will earn me a favor, once only. Last night, I dreamt of the blue silk pavilion overlooking the cloudy labyrinth of the Bounds. I listened to the mistress of this place speak of other visitors. The Suppression Bureau come here. Did you know that? I think they hope to recruit me as an ally, she snorts derisively. After what they tried to do to Christopher, but their folly is your fortune. I will tell you something that may help you if the Bureau ever troubles you. Alright, we are skilled in uncovering warded ways. We'll probably penetrate this warded door. And then when we bring in Neville, who makes everything better, we bear a great power of opening. We'll almost certainly shatter this warded door. So the summons are on this trip just because it preserves them. Okay, so moment of truth. We'll see which notoriety gets picked up. Excellent. So in this case, the fact that we didn't turn in the commission is actually kind of helpful. I prepared the text for study, so we'll do the same trick that we did before. There's not a whole lot that we need to worry about in terms of side effects right now, but it's just a little easier for me. So, those who do not sleep, a Fusine text attributed to the mystic Broadnax. Lock the study door, the work begins. And Season of Sickness coming up, so we already have a couple vitality. I'll just need to make sure that I keep the dream slot open. The death of a door. All doors must open, as all lives must end. This door has found its end here today. And we had a pretty normal shift at the Gaiety. Nothing nothing really to change. So no commissions to do. We'll just go straight back to the job. The stage awaits, hot and clean and bare and bright. If I move the moves and step the steps and do what is required, they'll pay me. All right, so now we're ready to talk to Dr. We'll talk to Dr. Adim to get the cooldown running. And then we'll talk to Jannings to get another commission. Nope. We'll just skip the text for that. So Mystique, again, a little inconvenient for us, but not the end of the world. Although, where'd that other notoriety... Oh, no, yeah, right. All of the notoriety's gone. We're waiting for the notoriety from this this expedition. Okay, so he said we were going to talk with Count Jannings. The Good Count's fraternity in Europe is seeking particular research. And I like talking with Teresa, so... Last night, I visited the Lodge of the Sage Knight. My hostess manifested as an elegant woman with fashionably short hair and dark glasses. No, she admits, I don't need them any more than I need eyes. Allow me my sentimentalities. But you've come for knowledge, I expect. Here's a story that I heard in my Carisham days. You're welcome to it. Only remember me if you come to make the pilgrimage. Alright, so I want to just keep an eye on sickness, so nothing to repair yet. I think we can afford another trip to the White Door. Sorry, I feel like there was another thing that I wanted to get out of the way. Nope. Here's what he needs. An edge commission, one we can do pretty quickly. All right, so I'm not completely opposed to sending out a heart follower to deal with the Mystique. It's not an urgent thing to deal with, but it just gets it off the table in time for the notoriety. There's not much else for me to do with talk other than maybe try to level up some of the moth followers. So, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to do that. That's one of the reasons I haven't tested it yet, although I would like to get around to it. I've prepared the text for study, and we'll take care of the flayed tantra before we get on the big study train. This tantra is recorded as being spoken by an enigmatic individual identified as Peel, with many of the qualities of the mythological Naga. The Flayed Tantra played a notable part in Alexander Sparrow's paranoid pamphleteering. Okay. It is almost impossible to stand upright in this place. Sorry, the Warrior's End. It is almost impossible to stand upright in this place, but the air is foul and our lamps burn low. Here is the Warrior King staked out on the funeral stone, his bones smashed to keep him from walking. The orbits of his skull are bound with bronze. So I think we'll do the commission this time. Be useful for a commission, and the light, the dark. Moth finds light in the dark, and so do I. I'm gonna have to remember to leave the dream slot open so that we can heal the sickness right away, although we've got more than enough vitality to get us by, so if it does turn out you know, if we're in a situation where I forget, it's not gonna be the end of us. Sorry. Last night, in the billowing blue of the Lodge of the Sage Knight, I sat on velvet cushions and watched two dead contend with shining swords. They came with the place, said the woman who rules here now, the one who once called herself Gallagher. I was not the Sage Knight, if that's what you're wondering. He went higher in the mansis, long before I came here. My attention has drifted. The swords sparkle like falling water. The dead move like dancers. Okay, do we have a... Season of Visions is coming up, so counter to my plans, I do actually need to use the dream slot for something else. So we'll grab the Fascination and the Fleeting Reminiscence. Also, the fact that the Fleeting Reminiscence goes away in 30 seconds would have been enough to motivate that. But again, we're in good shape. We've got 90 seconds left on the Vitality. We're losing this one, and we will be getting another one from the Chorus of the Heart. So not something that I'm too concerned about, but it is one of these things I'd like to just sort of take an inventory on. In the worst case scenario, if I didn't have any Vitality and I didn't want to try and generate some, we also have more than enough money to pay for the medicine. So it's certainly not the sort of thing to lose too much sleep over. Others have been here before us. Power still lingers, and no doubt they used it in their ceremonies. They have taken some of the warrior king's funeral treasures, but left something of their own. So here we've got the Grey Dawn oil, which, if I follow the pattern, it goes alongside the Witch-Kissed oil. We've got an icy atmosphere. So that'll potentially turn into dread if I don't find another use for it. We've got the Book of the Centipede. In the mid-1960s, when Madame Yi presented an entertainment based, she claimed, on this book. The Bone Flute, so of course we saw that in reference to summoning the Callagine. Its sound will cease, so this is for winter, not quite as strong as the Elegablian Manacle, but we can work with it if we need. Now, Piebald Pigment is something that I'm going to want to work with. That's going to get me a higher level moth instrument, and then that's going to be useful because that may mean the difference between me being able to move up my moth followers or not. And finally, the Meteoric Bullet. Tainite iron bullets are occasionally dug from the skeletons of unusual beasts across Europe, in the Middle East, and India. Someone has been hunting monsters. So in this case, with the reference to the scarred man, my guess here would be that we're seeing someone who is also participating in winter. Again, some of these figures are not limited to just one aspect, and it makes me think a little bit about. So you could definitely go much further into edge lore in the Exile. So I'd probably want to maybe keep an eye out for that in a future playthrough, but that's something we'll deal with later. Let's focus on the task at hand, the explore verbs available. So Keeglin Scratch. Here the Romans dug for silver until they reached the unsanctioned space where the names hid things not fit for sunlight. Many others have come since then, even as the tunnels crumble. Some have never left. And we'll add money. We prepare for the descent. We bring rope, tools, light. We arm ourselves against anything down there that may yet move. Now, on its own here, right, you've got so many different things. Rope and tools would probably be a Forge reference. Light would be lantern. And then arm ourselves against anything down there that may yet move. So if you think it's like, okay, so I'm potentially going to need Forge, lantern, or edge, well, that doesn't really narrow it down in terms of what the expedition's going to be. So in this case here, you take 30 seconds and maybe just wait to see what actually comes up rather than hey, we got lucky with the notoriety. Cool. Wait the 30 seconds and then see what comes up. Three possibilities makes it a little bit difficult when you're trying to figure out what to do with the oh, this is a pigment too. Is Witch-Kissed oil a pigment? The illness has damaged my health. I will need to rest before I'm fully recovered. Cure your affliction with funds or vitality. Prepare the text for study. Okay. I think we're ready to read these. I don't really know why I'm changing the order, but I am. And actually, we're close enough to the end. I think I'll maybe just call it there, because then I can do all the work in one go. So I've finished the manuscript. That will be able to turn in to Jannings as soon as we're ready. But yeah, we definitely did I think we were a little bit better off in terms of expeditions. The biggest advantages in terms of the expeditions that I see here are the knock item is quite helpful, maybe deceptively so. But just to give you an example, so we can now take the sunset right, and actually, sorry, this is the wrong one. So it's the right of the map's edge. So in this case, this gives me the instrument, and what I can give as far as the invocation and the offering. So this is a little bit more influenced by. In fact, actually, I can probably do. Nope, sorry, I was mistaken. That should be forge that I add. So this is actually a convenient way for me to get rid of the winter aspect. And this is enabled, I believe, specifically. No, we could still pull it off with a knock follower, actually. But basically, this can be kind of helpful. I always find it useful to have a knock follower and a knock instrument, because again, there is just this natural tendency to want to hoard stuff, and this is true for any game. This isn't specific to Cultist Simulator. So if you're like me and you don't like giving up lore to be able to advance a particular or to be able to perform a particular summoning or ritual, because not all rituals are summoning rituals, but basically if you don't like giving up lore in order to use some of these rites, likewise if you don't like giving up followers, you're kind of limited to the ones where you use influence. And the reason why it's, a little more, you'd be a little more willing to give up influence is because it's going away anyway. So, why wouldn't you want to, to use something that's going to expire? I need to be sure that I don't actually activate this, because I'll have trouble at the gaiety if I do. But essentially, you're not really able to do much with the right of the map's edge until you have that knock instrument, whereas the sunset right, because you need an assistant, usually you're going to have a knock follower. Now, I think if you have like 2 knock, you can't summon everything. I maybe need to double check that. But in this case here, now that I've got the icon of St. Agnes, I find it useful in terms of the 2 rites that I use most often. Then, I mean, there's also just, the books that I've been getting. There's a few other things that are useful, but I'd say probably the icon of St. Agnes is one of the larger benefits. But that is it for me tonight. Thank you very much for watching. If you have been enjoying the series and have not yet done so, and my apologies to those of you who've had to hear this like 30 times on the series, but please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. You can hit the subscribe button down below, and if you'd like notifications, you can hit the bell. And then if you did enjoy this episode, please leave a like, and if you want to comment on it, I always love reading them, and I try to respond to as many as I can, or at least all of the ones that seem to be looking for a response. And they also do help the videos get noticed, which is one of the reasons I ask for them so often. I can't remember if I'm on the Friday episode or not, but take care, have a lovely evening, and if it's not Friday, I'll see you tomorrow, and if it is Friday, I will see you next week. I actually do not remember where I am in the recordings. Take care.